how to get back into your habits if you've been off or you've fallen off the wagon for a few days or a couple of weeks. Before I get into that, I'd like to introduce myself. My name's Coach Krissa, mental and emotional health coach, and the purpose of Mindset Matters and this video vlog is to teach you about your mind, how your brain works, how habits work, so that you can better change whether mental, personal habits, or you can achieve that growth that you want to see in your life by first understanding how things work. So today we're going to be talking specifically about getting back into routines or back into habits, especially when you've either fallen off the wagon or maybe you've been off for a bit and you're getting back on. So the number one thing I see when it comes to making habit change is people expecting perfection and 100% commitment right out the gate. And there seems to be this stigma that if you don't achieve this right away, that somehow you're a failure for not doing it. So for myself, for example, over the past week, like over Christmas, I was really lax on my meal plans. And over the past week, I've just been getting back into things. So I noticed for myself over the past week that like I had done all my meal planning, I'd set myself up for success, and I was partially on track. Like I was eating healthy, and then I was still dipping into the occasional snacks. And I was really hard on myself for that, and other people were making comments as well. So it was really easy for me to kind of get into a state of, oh, I must be a failure if I can't do this. What's wrong with me? That was really my headspace. You know, I was kind of giving myself that mental pep talk of, okay, we've got to get serious. We've got to get into this. And then I did a real reality check-in with myself because I know better. When it comes to habit change, I understand what's required and the natural process. So the reality is when we're changing a habit, we have to be realistic with our expectations. So for me, I had been expecting myself to be perfect in week 1 after letting myself go off for a week or probably closer to 2 weeks and letting myself fall back into old habits. And then when I take a look at all the things I was expecting myself to change, like, you know, I always write everything down in a food diary of what I'm eating. Totally cut out sugar after kind of like having sugar in my bloodstream for a couple of weeks. Even keeping on track with eating regular meals. So that's like 4 to 6 meals a day, and having all the meal prepping done and making sure you're hitting all your macros. That's a lot of different things to be keeping track of. Number one thing we have to remember is that we're being realistic in our expectations of ourselves and the process. So here's how our brain works. It is only capable of really processing 1 or 2 maximum changes at a time. And when we push those changes, the brain goes into a little bit of overwhelm and it's not able to keep up. Typically, I try to make, 1 or 2 changes a month. Now, when it comes to getting back into habits or getting back into something that we've been doing, we have to be realistic with the idea that there's going to be this adjustment period, and that is okay. There's going to be this time of getting yourself back into the habits, figuring out what works for you, figuring out what times of day certain things work for you. So whether it's nutrition or whether it's exercise or whether it's changing some sort of routines at work, being really realistic with this transition period is what's going to make or break your success. Because many times if we're not successful or we struggle in that first 1 or 2 weeks, we often tell ourselves that we must be a failure, we must not be able to do it. When the reality is that usually there's a transition period. And it is okay to be in that transition period and not be perfect. The important thing is that we keep going and we keep getting better as we go. So like they say that no matter what your failures are, each failure is a step to success. The same thing goes when you're trying to get back into old habits or when you're making new habits for yourself. being realistic, understanding that there's this transition period where we're not going to be perfect, where our brains are adjusting to a new way of being. They're going to fall off the wagon every now and again, and that's okay. It's all about knowing what's going on in your brain, knowing that it's a transition period and we're retraining these habits for ourselves. So in order to stay consistent, stay on track, it's more about practice and consistency than it is about being perfect all at once. So whatever you're doing, whatever you're retraining yourself for, allow for this transition period and be okay if things don't go 100% perfect. We're adjusting, we're finding out what works for us, we're figuring out or maybe retraining our brain to get into those habits. So whatever it is that you're doing, allow for that transition period, be okay with it, and keep going and keep improving, because that's all that really matters in the long run. So thank you so much for watching today's episode of Mindset Matters. My name is Coach Krissa, and remember, mindset matters.